Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Moy Style podcast. Today's topic is going to be about the difference between Venezuelan players and American players. I thought today would be a perfect day to do this because, just this podcast will be coming out a few days after the World Classic between Venezuela and the U.S. I thought it was a great game, and so. I thought it would be a perfect time to bring this up. I get asked this question a lot, so I was like, you know what, let me make a podcast about this topic, and people can kind of learn and see the big difference between a lot of the Venezuelan players. And I'm talking about more of the guys that are that haven't been signed yet, that are not professional players yet, or college players yet. So the first thing, obviously, what a lot of people know is the poverty level, right? So what I mean about poverty, I'm not saying that here in the U.S. it doesn't exist, but back home is definitely a lot worse. So back home the kids, from the time they're born, they're given basically a bat, baseball, and a glove, and so they grow up with it. Excuse me. That's all they think about. That's what's in their blood, and that's all they want to do for the rest of their lives. They don't want to go to school, which I'm sure a lot of kids don't want to go to school either here, but they want to play. All they want to do is play baseball. And so now we do play other sports, but mainly that's the sport that a lot of kids will choose, and they basically put all their eggs in one basket, and they try to make it. Here in the U.S., obviously it's a lot different because you got multiple options, right? Which I love. You can still play all the sports. You can still go to middle school, and then you go play in high school, and then you can still play in college, and then you can still play professional baseball. So back home, right? It's all or nothing. And so what I mean about all or nothing, these kids are allowed to sign as a free agent at the age of 60 and a half. Here in the U.S., that's, as far as I know, that's not allowed. And so we don't get drafted back home. So we sign as a free agent. So by the time the kids are 60 and a half, that's the perfect age to sign a major league contract. And they can also sign a professional contract back home too. We have a professional league back home too, winter ball. And so a lot of people sign both. But here in the U.S., you can get drafted. So you can go to school. So you guys already know you can go to school. You can get drafted here. You can get drafted right out of high school. You can get drafted right out of college. And even after college, you still got opportunities to play maybe independent baseball, which is it's not affiliated with major league teams, but it's still professional baseball. You don't get paid as much, but you get an opportunity to maybe work your way to major league teams. So that's why you have those independent teams out there, or leagues. But that's how fast things can go back home. So to give you an idea, when this academy started to get bigger, they first started is when I was growing up. I think I was 14 when I first got to my academy, like the first academy that I got to, and that was. To this day, I'm still grateful with those two coaches that helped me out. Because if it wasn't for them, obviously I wouldn't be here in the U.S. I would have never played college baseball. I would have never taken my game to a different level. I would have never been able to even become a coach and do what I do now. So, but those guys took my game to a whole different level. And they took me at the age of 14. Nowadays, they take kids that are, maybe 11, 12, and they don't even want them to think about school. It seems like all they want to think about is baseball. And I know they take them into these academies. Again, I don't know much about the laws back home. I don't know the laws very well here either, but I just know that when I was growing up, a lot of kids would drop out of high school because they thought for sure they were gonna play professional baseball, and a lot of them didn't. I finished. Luckily, my parents forced me to finish my high school, and I finished my high school just fine. Obviously, you gotta be able to do that to get a scholarship here too. But a lot of kids back home, they drop out of high school, they drop out of school, and they don't I mean, they don't even come close to finishing school because, I mean, you got kids that are 11, 12, 13 years old, just already at these academies thinking, I want to go pro, I want to go pro, I want to go pro, and that's all they think about. And obviously their parents, they want their kids to make it too. So, and some of the kids, parents back home could be pretty intense with their kids. But obviously, kids back home, they love it too. And the reason why they love it too, obviously they love baseball, but they want to make it out of Venezuela, not because they hate their country, it's because obviously they want a better life for their families. So if you hear a lot of the stories from a lot of the Latin players, the first thing they want to do is buy a home for their mom, and then basically take care of their families first. Some sign for some get a pretty good chunk of money, but some just don't sign for much. But a lot of these players, they end up giving that money to their parents, so they want to really help out their parents. So that's their drive. When it comes to, like, when I talked about that whole poverty thing. And so here in the U.S., right, obviously we got more opportunities. I'm not saying that we don't have poor kids here in the U.S., but the opportunities here in the U.S. are endless. So you can go to high school here, and if you're 16, you're still a baby. And so you're basically maybe a freshman or a sophomore, so maybe a junior, but you still got time to go. So by the time you're 18, 19, as you guys know, and you could be a senior and still have a chance to get drafted. And not only that, but you can still continue your baseball career and go play college ball. So if you go to junior college, you can sign, your freshman or sophomore year. If you go to a 4-year school, normally you can sign your junior year, junior obviously or senior. So back home, just to kind of give you an idea, if by the age of 18 or 19, you're too old to sign a professional contract. I'm not saying it's not possible, but it's very difficult. They look at it here, to me, they look at it, and I'm just kind of guessing, they look at it like you're a guy that you're 28, 29 years old here. That's kind of how we look at it back home. So by the time, between the age of 16 and 17, or 16 and a half, and 17 and a half, they're trying to sign within that window, because that's like the time where the scouts want to sign these players, because they know they got time to develop them and all that good stuff, depending obviously how much money they want to offer them and everything. But some of these guys are 18, 19, they've given up baseball because they're too old. They got their own families now, or they may go to school. But now, obviously, you still have players that sign at that age, but you have to have some crazy talented players that happen to develop real late, and they get a chance. But not a lot of people get that opportunity. Now, a lot of people, if they don't make it as a professional player, they go try to get a scholarship, maybe play for their colleges back home. But the colleges back home are not the same as here. Here in the U.S., again, you get the opportunity to get drafted. Back home, we don't get drafted. A lot of the kids that are playing college back home is because they want to continue playing, the game they love. It's not necessarily because they know they're gonna sign. I mean, at least back when I was back home, I don't remember anybody signing right out of college, because that's not what anybody's thinking about. All they think about, again, is I want to play professional baseball, and that's it. That's all I care about. They don't want to go to school. They don't want to be playing and going to school at the same time. Obviously, a lot of kids don't want to do that here either. But that's how tough it is back home, and that's how things, like, it seems like everything back home is more sped up, because everybody wants to make it. But obviously not everybody gets the opportunity. So you get all these kids that drop out of high school, and that's it. They didn't make it. Or maybe some of the guys got drafted at the age of 16 and a half or 17. By the time they're 18, 19, they're let go. So they just didn't make it. They just didn't make it, because not everybody's gonna make it, right? There's only so many spots. Every year here comes a new bunch of group of players, and plus the draft, and so there's a lot of players, and some end up playing, overseas. Some just don't get a chance to play anywhere else. So it's a pretty tough life back home when you when you basically put a lot on the line and it just didn't work. So also, the reason why a lot of people back home don't go to school is because they know if they go to school, more than likely it's not even gonna pay off. And so I'm not saying that it won't work, but it's very, very, very difficult. Here in the U.S., I know there's still people that have a hard time finding even employment when they graduate, when they get their degrees. But they still got a better chance to get jobs here in the U.S. than they do back home. Back home, you can spend 3-4 years and not even have a shot to get a decent job, and that's why you see a lot of people leaving the country and all this stuff. And so here in the U.S., if you want to be a doctor, if you go through everything, you're gonna have a pretty good life. Lawyer, if you want to be a realtor, if you want to be, which you don't have to really go to school for that, but if you want to be whatever you want to be here, it's the opportunities are endless. Back home is very, very difficult to become successful at anything else but sports, especially baseball. We do play basketball, we do play soccer, but we don't really play multiple sports like they do here in the U.S. Here in the U.S., obviously, you can wrestle, you can play basketball, you can play soccer, you can play football, you can play, whatever sports going on in the off season. And so kids will go from baseball to football. So I'm talking about some kids, right? From football they go to let's say to basketball, or they go to wrestling, whatever the case may be. Back home we don't have that. So if you do that, if you're playing all the sports, I mean, pretty rare you have players that play multiple sports back home and still sign professional contracts. But we don't really have that. We either have baseball or nothing. We do have professional basketball teams, and then we also have professional soccer leagues. But again, they feel like they're wasting time, and that's all they want to do. Now, the biggest difference also about, trying to look at my notes here before, hopefully I don't forget anything here, it's that they practice more than they play, right? I'm not saying back home we don't play at all. We do play, right? But but I remember when I was growing up, we would play like on the weekend, once or twice, maybe 3 times in a week. And here, in the U.S., you're playing anywhere from 3 to 7 games in a weekend. And so, and on top of that, you're practicing maybe twice a week, which is normally what a lot of teams do. Maybe some other teams practice more, I'm not sure, but that's normally what we do. But so that's why a lot of kids here get burnt out, because first of all, they're not going to sign a professional contract when they're 16 and a half. They get all the way to high school, right? So, but going back to practicing more than we play back home, once you get to those academies, again, they're taking kids that are younger and younger, 11, 12 years old. I mean, that's real young to even be thinking about professional baseball, but that's how fast things work out back home. And so basically they practice, let's say Monday through Friday, and then on the weekend they're playing. But it's intense. Some like I said, like I mentioned before, a lot of kids are dropping out of school just because that's all they want to do. And to me, that's why my defense got so good, because now I'm not saying I'm the freaking superstar or anything like that, but it allowed me to come to the U.S. It allowed me to get a scholarship and get my degree, play all my 4 years and all that good stuff, and still have a chance to try to even get drafted. I mean, obviously I didn't get the shot, but I was still able to come to the U.S. and got my education and still continue to play more baseball. And I remember when I was started to take it like real serious. I believe I went like 2 years straight. It might have been longer, but at least 2 years straight, because at the time I was 14, I believe, yeah. And like from 14 to 16 or so, it was every day's thing. I would take ground balls in the morning. So like when we were out of school, we would show up, well, at least I would show up before everybody else, and my coach would just do extra work with me. I would show up there at 7 in the morning, Everybody else would show up at 8 or 8:30 or 9. I can't remember, but I was there at least an hour or so early, just taking extra ground balls, and then we would get done around 12 or 1 o'clock. Kind of drawing a blank on the specific times, but that's about the window there. And then I would come back again, I remember around 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and then he would take me to the park and get more ground balls and do more training. So it was obviously very, very intense. Here in the U.S., if you do that, I mean, the kids are gonna get burned out. And again, it's because, not because the kids here are not able to make it, it's because they end up playing more than they should practice. And I've always talked about this. I mean, if they want to really take the game to a whole different level, that's what they should focus on the most. And so that's why a lot of these kids are exhausted. Some kids are getting done with tournaments, 1 in the morning. It seems like sometimes I come home, like I get here midnight or 1 in the morning. It's crazy how long these tournaments can last and how exhausting they can be, especially when it's cold or when it's real hot. So obviously that's why a lot of kids, will quit at the age of 13, 14. I've had kids quit at 12, just because I've coached myself, and it's pretty tough to see. But it's because of the whole playing more, and so then on top of that, you got kids that want to pick. They're struggling with their teams, and now they want to go pick up with another team and pick up with another team. So like they never get a break. They never get time to work on their craft. So that's where the burnout comes from. Now, before I forget, just looking at my notes here, so I don't forget, but when you do sign back home a professional contract, you're signing as a free agent, right? We don't get drafted, so you do have your coach normally is your agent. So normally they, because obviously this is a business, and so once you sign a professional contract, then they take a percentage of it, and so. However much money you sign for, they normally take about 20, 30, 40%, whatever the percentage is. Everybody's different. I don't know that anybody takes any less than 20%. Maybe they do, I'm not sure. But I remember back home, that's what it was. Anywhere from 20 to 40% is how much they take from their signing bonus. And obviously, they want to try to get as much as possible. Because they know when they go through the minor leagues, they're not going to make that much money, and American players are the same way too. They're not going to get very much at all. I heard that they're trying to kind of better their pay and all that stuff, but it's never going to be the same as what you initially signed for. Excuse me. And so, like, I remember a lot of the old players, like, they would sign for $1,000, $2,000, $3,000. I've heard the stories. Sometimes I watch the stories just because I want to remember some of the stuff from back home, and I kind of listen to the stories and how much money they signed for. I'm like, man, that's crazy. And then they were practically getting paid nothing when they were playing the minor leagues, and somehow they made it. A lot of people didn't make it, but the ones that made it, I think it's incredible. Now, we don't have, before I forget, we don't have like high school season. We have it's kind of like travel ball here in the U.S. And so it's obviously it's pretty competitive, but we don't have high school. So I mean, we do go to high school, but we don't have high school baseball teams. So like the only ones that I could remember hearing about were the rich schools that have maybe the baseball leagues and stuff like that, maybe. But other than that, we don't have that. Here in the U.S., that's what you have, right? So you have travel ball, you have those showcase teams, and then you also have your high school team, right? So a lot of people want to make your high school team, and so again, back home we don't have that. So we do go to high school, we just don't have those high school seasons. So I'm trying to think what else. I'm forgetting here? So yeah, hopefully I'm not really forgetting anything here. So I wanted to kind of give you an idea how things work out back home. And if you think about it nowadays, there are more and more Latin players, and I'm sure in Dominican Republic is the same. Puerto Rico might be a little bit different. But I know Dominican Republic, they work just pretty similar to how we work back home, and so if you hear the stories, you're gonna hear how hard they had it. So But other than that, I hope you liked this episode here. I was trying to make it shorter. Hopefully it didn't take too long. But if you have any questions, anything you want me to talk about, any topics or anything like that, I would love that. Last episode, I had quite a few questions, quite a few people DM me, and they really enjoyed it. So I'm trying to, make this podcast as educational as possible, not just me, but also interviewing other people, and hopefully helps a few people out there. So if you guys are watching on this, please subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and remember, keep it Moy Style.
Hey guys, Moy Style Baseball here. If you're interested in having me come out to your city for a fielding camp or a hitting camp, or if you're in the Oklahoma area and you're looking for private lessons or group lessons, you can shoot me a text at 251-509-3815. You can also email me at moystyle33@gmail.com. Keep it Moy Style.